I'd love to find out who's with us today, who's in the room. And part of what this exercise was to do just that, who's with us, who's in the room. But there's some other pieces I'd like to figure out. Is there anyone in the audience here that is not connected or affiliated with the University of Wisconsin in any way, shape, or form? You are here because you are a concerned individual and you're looking to learn more and discover more about diversity and inclusion efforts. If you are, just quickly raise your hand. Raise it high, raise it high. Yes, if you're not affiliated with UW-Madison. So if you are not here, and so I think I can get Ms. Cooper. She's here, she's an alumni, but what I mean by affiliated is that you are not currently employed by University of Wisconsin-Madison. All right, so we got some other folks who are not currently employed. Great. Let me ask, are there any people here from Milwaukee? From our Milwaukee sister institutions? Not just Madison, but Milwaukee, period. If you're here from Milwaukee and you came all this way, right, okay. Are there any folks who are from the Madison community in general? Just Madison community in general. I see a hand here, back here, yes. All right, all right, all right, we got a few hands, excellent. Anyone from Green Bay? Got Green Bay back here? Great, Stevens Point? Stevens Point? No Stevens Point? Yesterday the people here, right? Yeah. Well, we didn't do it yesterday because I kind of figured it would have took a while. This room is pretty jam-packed. But for those of you who are fortunate enough to complete your card, there will be a wonderful prize, a hug, from Miss Deidre Gardner. I'm messing with her. She's somewhere around here. But we've reached the point in our program today that I'd like to just kind of set the tone for us a little bit. As you all know, we've made mention of the fact that the campus is in the midst of developing its next 10-year diversity initiative framework plan. It's kind of floating by a number of reference points. Professor Marla Smacken, who is my co-chair for the Campus Diversity and Climate Committee, was not able to be here with us today. So in her stead, I stand as the co-chair of that committee, and I want to acknowledge and give a context for the Ad Hoc Diversity Planning Committee. The committee was formed last fall, I believe in November, and officially received their charge and began conducting the enterprise of culling and getting ideas from campus constituents and community partners to come up with a set of recommendations that will be shared to the shared governance institutions, so UC committee, ASAC, classified staff, governance committee, of course the CDCC, and my office, and the provost's office. That process has begun in earnest. They have been meeting fervently since, I want to say, February. But really the work ratcheted up, I'd say, this summer. We had some turnover in the committee, just because I think the initial charge set a framework or a time frame that was a bit challenging, in all honesty, to adhere to. We want it to be a quality experience rather than an experience that is rushed. And so, since I came on board, I have been just delighted to work very closely with Professor Ruth Latowski and my main man, my brother from another mother, Ryan Atsirius, a graduate student in the ELPA program. Right? He didn't know he's blushing right now, but you may still be able to see some of it when it comes up. But they're going to talk to us for the next hour and kind of walk us through where things are with respect to the process. As many of you know, talking and thinking about diversity can be a challenging experience. There are a lot of ideas. There's a broad spectrum of where people fall in terms of the extent to which diversity is something that we actively pursue in our day-to-day practices, and the extent to which that measures up or is in sync with our rhetoric. And I think there's room for improvement here, and what this committee is challenging us to do is to pay attention to that process and reaffirm the fact that it is indeed a process, and this will not be a kind of static document. This is not to suggest that past diversity plans were static, but we're in an era right now where we recognize and acknowledge that something dynamic has to shift and change if we're really going to be honest about moving the needle with respect to making sure this place feels welcome and open and accessible to any and everyone who sets foot on this campus. That is a mammoth task, y'all, right? It's not an easy thing, and we need everyone everyone involved in the conversation. And it may be a difficult conversation at times, but we still need to have that conversation. As I said yesterday, in many ways, the conversation is just the first step of several that will lead us to a place where we can develop action, policy, guidelines, and so forth that would allow us to do the kind of work that we're committed to doing, and more importantly, have it show up throughout all facets of the campus. So it isn't something that we talk about as a great idea, but it's something that we live in practice. So without further ado, please, warm welcome for Professor Latowski and Ryan Atsiris.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick, and good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's great to see so many people here, and it's great to have seen so many people here yesterday. It's our honor and our pleasure to have this opportunity to work with our campus and our community to develop this framework for diversity and inclusive excellence. And Ryan and I would like to take a few minutes to tell you about the work that we've been doing to date with our incredible committee. And then our colleague Harry Webney-Berman is going to help us with our engagement of the people who are in the room in thinking about some of the issues that are really important and in starting to consider some of the questions that we have been coming up with. Before we begin, we'll also draw your attention to some posters. There are 6 of them around the room, and they represent the 5 themes that the committee has been developing, plus there's an overview poster. And we will invite you throughout the day at lunch and then throughout any time that you have to meander in the room to please visit these posters. They represent some of the initial questions and strategies, and we're looking forward to having you read them, think about them, and engage with us in helping us develop the recommendations of the work. So as Patrick kindly mentioned, this work is really very much a shared governance process. I'm just trying to find the pointer here. Do we have a pointer? Well, anyway, I'm used to lecturing with pointers. Right? So this is a shared governance process because we're working with the faculty, the staff, the students, and very important partners in the community. And can I have the next slide, or how do we move on to the next slide?
Uh-oh.
We're not used to, there's no laptop. There we go. Okay, good.
Oh.
So can someone just, how do we advance? Do we just say advance? Okay, lovely. Excellent. It's like in big medical conferences where you have no control over your slides. Great. Each member of the student body, the staff, the faculty, and the community is invited to participate with us in thinking about some of these important issues. And we had a lovely small engagement session on this topic yesterday. So what we want you to think about is, what does diversity look like to you, and what does it mean to you, right? As it unfolds and as you think about its meaning to you, I mean, you're in the room and you're already engaged, but take this question out to other people who you know on campus who may not be asking themselves this question, and engage with them. Be our ambassadors. Be the workers who are engaged with us in this work, and start to begin to ask people this question. So how is it about you or me and not just somebody else, right? Can I have the next advance? Thank you. So what are the most urgent problems on this campus, and how do we begin to solve them? And I think that Dean Schultz this morning made some excellent comments about some of the problems that he sees in LNS. We can imagine that those problems would be carried out to many of the other colleges, maybe through different lenses and through some different areas of focus. But that area of highlight is the kind of question that we'd like everybody to be asking themselves. What are the problems? How do we begin to address them? Can I please have the next bit? Thank you. So now the next question is, what can I do? What can all of us do on this campus to move this plan forward, to begin to move the work of diversity and inclusive excellence forward in a meaningful way for us and for everybody else. The next one, thank you. So you can scroll through the next few, which is in my own work, in my research, in my work with my peers, in my interactions, etc. You can imagine and be creative in what we're thinking about. Actually, if you go back one, sorry, what you see on the bottom is a Wordle. And a Wordle is what we come up with when we take words from a document or from a series of conversations and we feed them into a computer program that looks at the most commonly utilized words. And this is one that I borrowed from the internet when I Googled Wordles of diversity, but I think it's very representative of what we're seeing in the work that we're doing because the words that are used most frequently are highlighted in color and in size, they rise to the top. So I ask each of you in this room, what is your Wordle? What are the common themes? What are the ideas that pop to the top when you're thinking about the issues, the ideas, the problems, and how we begin to solve them? And Ryan will take the next slide.
So hopefully we can have a diversity plan specific Wordle at some point when we can figure out how to get rid of all the prepositions. All right, so on the next slide, just a really very brief overview of where we've come from over the past almost 30 years now in diversity planning here at UW-Madison. Our last plan, Plan 2008, ended in 2008, so about 5 years ago. And so I think if you advance to the next point. So the last plan, Plan 2008, and really its predecessors focused primarily on issues of race and ethnicity and gender, specifically looking at how we can increase the numbers of women in areas where women have historically been underrepresented. So on the next point on this slide, one of the ways that we've been looking at diversity is really under an expanded definition and looking at all of the different areas of identity and the ways in which identity play a role in all facets of our lives and recognizing that we all have different identities that are important to recognize and important to value. So on the next point I think this is, oh, nope, it's a new slide. On this new slide, we see the puzzle of identity. And so these are just some of the identity markers that we're looking at. This is, of course, not an exhaustive list on the puzzle pieces, as we're all very complex individuals, and we all bring lots of different histories and standpoints to the work that we do, the learning that we engage in, and the ways in which we interact with one another here on campus and in our daily lives. So while this isn't an exhaustive list, this is just kind of our starting point, and we hope that through these conversations we learn to see how there are more and how they interact with one another. So on the next slide, I'll hand it back to Ruth.
So we've been doing a lot of homework and reading through plans from other campuses, as well as going back to our roots, our history, thinking about the UW system and how we engage in work of diversity within the UW system. And so we're thinking about the definition, and of course, as we've embraced a much broader definition beyond race, ethnicity, and gender, and some of the characteristics and features that we saw in the last slide, we're thinking through every individual, how every individual brings a different set of experiences, expertise, questions, knowledge base, and needs to this campus. And so we're embracing the concept and the definition of inclusive excellence alongside with diversity as we move forward to develop this framework, which will hopefully be a framework that we will utilize, implement, and think through for the next decade or beyond that. Thank you. The next slide, please. And just scroll through so we could see all of it. Thank you. So we're also thinking about the campus strategic framework from 2009 to 2014. And we don't need to read the text out to you because this is available online. It's available on our website, diversityplan2013.wisc.edu. So you can read all these documents online, but we'd like to really think through, again, the framework within which we're developing the work that we're doing. And when we think about our campus strategic framework, the vision, the mission is for the university to be a leading institution, as Dean Schultz said, in the 21st century. We're already one of the top universities in the world, but how is it that diversity and inclusive excellence can be integrated and can move forward many of the missions and the goals so that our students can go out into the world, be leaders in the world, so we can be leaders in the community. And so we all feel that this is a place that is our home, our cultural home and our intellectual home. And so people want to come here and they want to stay here. The next slide, please. Thank you. Ryan, do you want to tell them about our phases?
Sure. So this slide shows the kind of trajectory that we've been working on, starting back in, well, actually, it was in November of 2012 when the charge came down from the University Committee to the Campus Diversity and Climate Committee. In case you all haven't had your fill of shared governance over the years, there was definitely a process by which we came about, but we had our first meeting back in February of 2012. And as Patrick alluded to earlier, we've had some changeover, but one thing that we've definitely had going for us is we've had a consistent forward momentum. So we first started out by gathering all of the information we could. Ruth said we did our homework. There are thick binders that are out on the tables out there if you're interested in reading through different diversity plans from other universities and from across the UW system. We poured through those. We pulled out some of the interesting and salient points for our process. And then we really sat down with our 5 working groups, is what we're calling them, our 5 thematic areas, and we tried to integrate as much as we could into a draft plan, which form the basis for these posters that we have up here around the room, and will form the basis for the different engagement that we do here on campus and throughout the community over the next month. And then, so the plan moving on from there is to come up with a more solid draft plan. This draft plan that I just spoke about, it's in its very rough phases, which is why we'd like to talk to you to try to polish it up some more, so that when we have the first draft that we go out and present back to the campus and community, we can make it even stronger. And then, so towards the end of the academic year in 2014 in the spring, we hope to have it presented to the various governance bodies for approval and then implementation. And if you advance on this slide, please, there we go. So we have our engagement and listening sessions that are happening both on campus and in the community. And then at the bottom of each of the little columns there, you'll see that there are these cyclical little arrows that are looping around that say alignment and feedback. And the point of that is kind of going along with the idea of this not being necessarily just a static plan that goes up on the shelf, but is a framework, is that we will constantly be in dialogue with one another, not only throughout this process, but as the framework and the plan moves on into the future, so we can consistently see how we can improve upon the work that we're doing and make sure that we're being as responsive to the needs of the campus and the community as possible. So on the next slide, all right, so on the next slide shows us our areas of focus and some recommendations. So the first one is access. That's our first working group. And then we have inclusive climate and culture. And then the next one is on creativity and innovation. The Wisconsin idea, getting back to our roots. And then the final one is accountability. And I'm not going to read through these because inside of the folders, the sheet is actually in there. And it has all of the information that's on those boxes. And then at the top, it also includes some questions. So I think on the next slide, from here, oh, maybe not.
Not yet.
No.
Maybe I'll quickly
Okay, yes, go
explain the importance of this, the text that you see in front of you, which is that the work that we're doing can't really be achieved without incredible collaboration with a number of important units on campus. So we've worked quite closely with the Office of Quality Improvement because we have the content, which is where we want to end up, but there's the process. What is the process by which we gather data, we engage the campus and the community, we have conversations, we consider the information that we're getting, and then try to put that into an intelligent document that will be adopted and embraced. We have the Office of Human Resources who've served as a model for the work that they have done in terms of campus engagement. And we have Harry Webney-Berman and his colleagues from the Office of Human Resource Development who have been working very closely with us and will continue to ramp up that work as we move forward. And of course, we're very grateful to the Chief Diversity Officer and everybody in their division, because without their collaboration, we could not achieve the level of sophistication and conversation and engagement that we've already been able to achieve. Very important, though, you notice that we have to engage our leadership. And so we've been interacting very closely with the university committee, with the provost, with the chancellor, with the many, many units on campus who we believe are going to help us bring around the stakeholders. We've been engaging with the UW Foundation, with our community members, and many other important ambassadors, important stakeholders, people who will help us put the work forward. And I know that many of you who are in this room today are part of these units and part of the leadership and the groups that have already been having conversations, sending us emails, coming to our meetings, and working very, very closely with us. And so this is an initial thank you, and you'll hear many, many thank yous along the way as we continue to move forward. If we can have the next slide, please. No, maybe one more. Oh, well, so we bring you back to the original idea that we started this little presentation with, which is to ask yourself, what is your Wordle? To begin to ask yourself how to help us move our work forward, to ask ourselves how we define diversity in the new 21st century as we develop the framework for diversity and inclusive excellence. If I can have the next move, scroll forward. So in your own work and with your colleagues and in your research and in your teaching and in your community engagement. And the next slide, please. Thank you. Now, if you go on one more slide. Good. So we have two questions for you today. And what we're going to do is begin our initial engagement here today with all of you with the help and leadership of Harry Webney-Berman and a number of colleagues who are here today who've been on our committee or working closely with our committee and with the CDO's office. And if I could please invite these colleagues to stand up so everybody knows who you are, and as you help to move around the room and help with the conversations that Harry will get us started with, people will recognize you, and thank you in advance, and also for all the work you've been doing for many, many months so far, and will continue to be doing. So Harry, why don't we invite you now to explain the process that we've been planning for today. Thank you for working with us.
Thanks, Ryan. Morning, everybody. So as Ruth and Ryan have been saying, we want to start the engagement process here. And for any of you who attended the breakout session yesterday, you actually started to be thinking about these things as well. And it includes these two questions that we'll be focusing on in a moment. And then just to reiterate a couple of other points before we move into this. These posters are around the room, not merely for us to look at, but also for us to be able to comment on. So while, as a result of the conversation, we're hoping that you will feel moved to write down on an index card that you have at your table, and hopefully most of the tables have these index cards, and there are a couple of other tables, bless you, a couple of other tables that we could use to seed them. We want to get your feedback regarding where we should be focusing our attention. This is really timely, it's really meaningful in our process, and whether you're providing feedback as it relates to the conversations that come from these questions, or you're providing feedback based upon what you observed this afternoon on these posters, It's very important to us as we move forward in framing the engagement sessions that we'll be conducting in November and beyond. The second thing I want to call your attention to is you have table tents on your tables. And on one side it shows 2013 Diversity Forum and ways you can plug in on Twitter. But on the other side, it has the dates, times, and locations of the various engagement sessions that are set up for early November. Please notice that these sessions are taking place at various locations on campus. They're taking place morning, afternoon, early evening, and late at night. They're being conducted in 5 languages, and the intention really is for all of these sessions to be not only bringing those of us who tend to get involved in this stuff, but picking up on what Ruth and Ryan and Patrick have been saying, for us to now encourage many others to get involved in these conversations. And if there are barriers or challenges or other factors that interfere with people's abilities to participate as these are structured, we want to hear those from you as well. We want to understand how we can really reach out to this full campus community, students, staff, faculty, interested alumni and community members, how we can reach out to that full campus community to get them involved, because we really need to hear as many different voices as possible in this process. So with that, going to invite you in a moment to engage in a 15-minute conversation that could easily continue on into lunch about those 2 questions that are up on the screen. So more specifically,
Keep scrolling till we get all 5.
They're the 5 work teams, right? How can the campus achieve excellence in inclusivity and diversity? How can that happen? From your perspective, as you think about the challenges in front of us, where do we need to focus? And then very importantly, and this connects to a theme that's been coming up throughout the forum, how do we know we're doing it? How do we measure success in this area? What would be important factors, criteria that let us know that we're on the right track? Now, for some of us, it means that we're drawing upon experiences where we know we've seen that success before. So bring those experiences into the conversation. For some of us, it's noticing what's absent and the gaps. Bring that in the conversation. But what I'd like you to do in a moment here is find a partner or a couple of people, and I want to build on what happened in the last exercise too. Maybe you're sitting with people that you often talk with. I'm going to stretch out here. Face people at the next table. Talk with people you don't usually have these conversations with. And with that small group discussion, be able to share with one another your perspectives and insights so that we can start to understand those things in conversation together. And then after the 15 minutes, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes then to jot down what came from the conversation on the cards so we can collect those and start to, as a committee, learn what emerged from those discussions. So